Well, hello, good evening to you. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We are live from News about this week and also live on TV3 down on Facebook, this region of 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I am Alfred Okansi. Tonight, Speaker of Parliament Alban Sumana Kingsford-Bagbin fails in his attempt to set aside the Supreme Court orders suspending his ruling, which declared 4 parliamentary seats vacant. We were in court earlier today. We'll tell you how the court dismissed the Speaker's application and what is next. Stay with us. Ghanaians who in any way undermine democratic processes in this country risk being denied visas to the United States of America as the U.S. Department introduces new visa restrictions. In fact, this has been in the offing over the last at least 48 hours since this was released. There's been a number of reactions to this. We have a conversation tonight. And also in politics here on your election command center. Some 38 days to election day, December 7. Questions begets questions. That is the story of the flag bearers of the governing New Patriotic Party, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and the NDC flag bearer John Dramani Mahama as the campaign gets heated. But really, who should be answering questions? That's for you to help us answer. As always, you are an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is GhanaTonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
A 5-member delegation of the Council of State, led by the chairman Anotu Serbo, today called on the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Alban Sumana Kingsford-Bagbin, to ascertain at first-hand happenings in the legislature in recent times, resulting in the adjournment of the House indefinitely. After a long deliberation, members of the Council assured the Right Honourable Speaker of their preparedness to assist him and the leadership of the House to resolve whatever impasse there may be, to pave the way for a recall of the House. The Speaker gave a brief of the situation in Parliament at the basis of his pronouncements on the floor of the House. He assured the delegation of his commitment to the development of the country's democracy and its people. The release says the Council applauded the efforts of the Speaker. The Supreme Court has dismissed application by the Speaker of Parliament seeking to set aside its ruling, which asked Alban Bagbin to halt the execution of declaring the seats of 4 members of Parliament vacant. The 5-member panel, presided by Chief Justice, held that the Speaker's application amounted to misinformation and misapprehension of the law.
First, the defendant, that is the Speaker of Parliament, now has no excuse whatsoever to decline or fail to file his defense and statement of case to the action. So now we are poised for a full hearing and determination of the matter. No more interlocutory or interim application.
President Akufo-Addo has responded to John Dramani Mahama's comment not to debate Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia because he is not his class. Nana Akufo-Addo was emphatic the former president does not match with the NPP presidential candidate in terms of class, especially when he only served 1 term, making him a Class 1 president.
Mahama also was class here. Yes, our class of 1. Class of 1. I don't know what's our class room. And your class, I'm a person about class.
Mahama's class is only his 1 term tenure. And that is something I don't like Dr. Bawumia to associate with. Dr. Bawumia will continue another term after winning this post to be a part of Rollins, Kufuor and myself, who were handed 2 terms in office.
Mahama, they are no 1 term presidents, you know, there are no any about Bawumia.
Vice presidential candidate of the opposition NDC, Professor Jane Nano Pokwajaman, has urged communicators of the opposition party to spread the party's policies and eschew politics of insults. Addressing party supporters in the Obuasi West constituency, Professor Jane Nano Pokuajaman advised supporters of the party to only debate on issues.
Certain years is some maya. Hanka gonna any problem. Ye di atem no di ye di fire nkosihwe. Answer sashe. Ama potholes no, ama kwani anye ni ye. Ama nsu ameka ho. Ama schools ameka ho. Ama airport papa bi ameka ho. Ama habo ama ameka ho. Ama manfo asumanjwom. Na ye ya ne se kire mofra no kasa enyefe na amfata yen. Enti no de enda ye yes nche obi a odi atam na chese wunya serious.
The Ghana Health Service is advocating for people to go back to the sanitary systems put in place during the COVID time to help contain the spread of the cholera outbreak. Director General of the service, Dr. Patrick Kuma Abuaji, speaking to the media, noted that the severity of cases being seen at Ada East is beginning to slow.
We need more education. We need to ensure that people go back to the sanitary system that were put in place in COVID time. Hand washing is very crucial, eating warm foods, and keeping very clean environment and making sure that people are making access to potable water. And I think with that, that's the only way we'll be able to quickly contain, because we are not going to be responsible for how other countries manage their outbreak. And if they don't manage it well, we remain at risk.
There's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Alban Sumana Kingsford-Bagbin, fails in his attempt to set aside the Supreme Court's orders suspending his ruling, which declared 4 parliamentary seats vacant. We were in court earlier today. We'll tell you how the courts dismissed the Speaker's application, and in fact, a number of reactions that have greeted the decision by the Supreme Court earlier today. And let's put it on record that this is not the determination of the substantive matter before the court. The 11th of November is the date to watch, and we're going to get into all of that as we go on. But yeah, earlier today, the Supreme Court dismissed the application by the Speaker of Parliament seeking to set aside their ruling, which asks Alban Bagbin to halt the execution of declaring the seats of the 4 members of Parliament vacant. You remember that ex parte application, and then the aftermath of it almost 2 weeks ago. Now, the 5-member panel presided over by the Chief Justice herself held that the Speaker's application amounted to misinformation and misapprehension of the law. That's their conclusion on this. But take a listen to the Chief Justice delivering her ruling earlier today. Take a look.
Noted that the issue was the subject of constitutional disputes and not that of political parties. Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu, presiding over the panel, indicated that they had within its ranks a former General Secretary of PNC and former NDC parliamentary candidate. Counsel for the leader of MPP caucus, Afenyomakin, was satisfied with the decision of the court.
First defendant, that is the Speaker of Parliament, now has no excuse whatsoever to decline or fail to file his defense and statement of case to the action. So now we are poised for a full hearing and determination of the matter. No more interlocutory or interim applications.
So lawyers of the Speaker of Parliament have been given up to November 6 to file all their processes and statement of issues that will be relied on. But the case itself has been adjourned to November 11, where the Supreme Court is expected to make its hearing and then eventually make its final judgment on the substantive matter on November 11. Lord Rasari, TV3 News, Supreme Court.
Well, so that was just also a summary of what happened in court earlier today, and the specific indication and also the references that the Chief Justice gave in coming to some conclusions is what has generated some questions and also reactions as to whether really that satisfies or ticks the boxes with respect to the conversation that preceded today. But let's hear from the Chief Justice, the specific reference she made and the law on which she dwelt on to deliver the ruling and the conclusion of that 5-member panel earlier today.
We have considered the application and find that the grounds supporting the application have no merit because of the very explicit and clear directions of the 1992 Constitution, specifically Article 2, Article 130, and Article 296, and established decisions of the Supreme Court from decades of the country's constitutional history. Exceptional circumstances that would flow from the effect of the ruling of the Speaker of Parliament declaring the 4 seats vacant and a determination not to allow the MPs to remain in Parliament. What are some of the effects that weighed on our minds as exceptional circumstances that were alluded to in the ruling? The 4 constituencies of Amenfi Central, Fomena, Aguna West, and Suhum in the Western region, Ashanti region, Central region, and Eastern regions of Parliament are made up of hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians who had queued to elect these members of Parliament to represent their interests in Parliament as their voices. By declaring that their duly elected representatives in Parliament had vacated their seats for acts that were interpreted within the light of Article 97(1)(g) by the Speaker, the Speaker was actually enforcing this interpretation of Article 97(1)(g) against those hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians, and not just the 4 people that sit in Parliament.
And in fact, this is the matter that has generated some conversation right now. My colleague Dennis Baberi Wadam, Esquire, is going to be joining me. He was in court earlier today, and we're going to set the basis and break it down into pieces every step of the way so that you understand the layers of the Chief Justice's earlier, in fact, the panel of judges earlier ruling today on the Speaker's application and the conversation that has ensued as a result of this, the dismissal of that application by the Speaker of Parliament seeking to set aside that Supreme Court order to have him, that's a decision to declare these 4 seats vacant, unexecutable. Dennis is here. It's good to have you. Now, first question on the mind of people, really, why the Supreme Court rejected the Speaker's motion to set aside that October 18 orders. What was the issue?
Well, so the court came to the conclusion that, having listened to the applicant, the Speaker in this case, and listened to counsel for the majority leader, Alexander Afenyo-Markin, and that of the Attorney General, the court came to the conclusion that the 8 grounds on which the applicant mounted that particular suit or application, they have no merit. And they have no merit because they made reference to the constitutional provisions of Articles 2, 130, and then 296 of the 1992 Constitution. Now, in explaining Article 2, the court says that for the fact that the Article 2 establishes constitutional supremacy of the country, what it means is that essentially if any person alleges that an act contravenes any provision of the Constitution, that person can invoke the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court for an order that will set aside that particular action.
Right.
In essence, the court came to the conclusion that, when you look at the grounds on which this suit was mounted, or this application was mounted, one, it was to the effect that the Supreme Court did not have the jurisdiction to hear the matter. So they based on Article 2 and then Article 130 to establish that indeed the court has that jurisdiction to hear.
Right.
citing the explanation I just gave earlier. Again, there was also the question as to whether the application itself was even proper before the court.
True.
I mean, that was by way of procedure, because the applicant makes the argument that the manner in which that application came before the court was not proper. He also raises issues about service and all that. But let's look at what the specific issues that the court had to deal with. So on the question of jurisdiction, the court looked at Articles 2 and 130, and that's where it asserted that constitutional supremacy. In essence, it is the only court that can interpret and enforce the Constitution. And that is what they said they were doing in this particular instance. There was also a question of proper service. And remember that when it came to service, there was an issue of a certain circular. That was an agreement, supposed to be an agreement between the Chief Justice and the Speaker of Parliament as to when the Speaker can be served and members of Parliament in general could be served. The Speaker had to reject the court processes being served on him because he had said that he and then the Chief Justice agreed that they could only be served on Monday. And to the fact that the service was not effective on Monday, the Speaker wrote that the processes be sent back to the court. But then the court came to the conclusion that they are of the view that all the processes that were served on the Speaker, they were in accordance with law and they were in accordance with administrative processes.
I see.
Yes, and yes, so there's that particular SOT where you hear the Chief Justice speak on how the service was appropriate with respect to the circular that was in contention as to whether the circular took precedence over the law or all that. Let's listen to the Chief Justice, then we'll put that into proper context.
We have considered the objection to the procedure used to serve the Speaker because of the administrative circular of the Chief Justice in 2021 and 2024. We are satisfied that administrative procedures cannot override the potency of legality, and every procedure used by the Supreme Court to serve the processes on the Speaker of Parliament were actually in conformity with law and the circulars issued by the Chief Justices in 2021 and 2024.
So that's the position of the Chief Justice on this matter.
So in fact, really she goes further to clarify, or the court clarified, that in that circular, the circular in question, the agreement was that the Speaker can be served personally on Mondays, but that he could be served through the legal department on any other day. So all that put together, that was how they came to the conclusion that the Speaker's interpretation of the circular, based on which he rejected the processes, was inappropriate, and the court was of the view that service was properly effected.
I recall the former director of the Ghana School of Law, Sir Kwekwansa Sari, make the point that even serving the Speaker through the legal department, in his own considered view, was a wrong approach.
Well,
really, and so it's obviously contrary to what the Supreme Court has concluded on today.
Well, so that's what the Supreme Court says, I mean, with respect to that. And they did not deny the fact that there was an existence of a circular. In fact, she even indicated that it existed before she came into office, and that when she came into office, there was a second meeting or another meeting with the Speaker, and then that particular circular was activated again. So it exists. What's
the question of the issue of natural justice? I think that's another issue that came up as well.
Yes, so the issue of natural justice came because of the ex parte motion. So it was the argument of the applicant, in this case the Speaker, that for the fact that they were not heard and an order was granted to suspend his ruling, it was not fair in the interest of justice. Yes, and they made reference to the rules of courts. The rules of courts are clear. The basic rule is that no ex parte motion should be accepted. However, there's an exception. So they made reference to the exceptions.
What are those?
So the exception is that there has to be exceptional circumstances to warrant the hearing and grant of an ex parte motion. So the court was of the view that, having looked at the facts before them, they thought that there were exceptional circumstances. Then the court went on to list a number of them. The fact that 4 members of Parliament had lost their seats by the Speaker's ruling, and that they were not just there on their own accord, they represented some constituents, hundreds of them, according to the court. They felt that it was not, that amounted to an exceptional circumstance that they needed to remedy. they make the point that this order came at a point where the Speaker was in the known of a pending motion or a pending lawsuit that was challenging or seeking for an interpretation of the provision that he used to declare those seats vacant.
I see.
He also went on to talk about the fact that some of them were also playing other rules, like the second deputy speaker, which would also affect it. If some of them were ministers, likely they would have been affected and all that. The court came to the conclusion that those circumstances were exceptional in their nature, for which the grant of an ex parte motion was allowed under the rules.
Let's hear from the Chief Justice on this, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
that point that you made earlier, also espousing that in the process of reading the judgment today. Take a look.
It can be seen from the very first page of the 1992 Constitution that the most fundamental and hallowed right of every Ghanaian that the 1992 Constitution gives and jealously guards is that when anyone, including the President and Vice President, is embarking on an act, on any act that violates any provision of the Constitution, or if anyone is of the considered opinion that any law or rule enacted by any legislative body breaches the Constitution, that person can run to the Supreme Court for enforcement of the Constitution. That person does not even need to be directly affected by that act or law. This Supreme Court regularly exercises this original and exclusive jurisdiction for citizens of this country. Exceptional circumstances that would flow from the effect of the ruling of the Speaker of Parliament declaring the 4 seats vacant and a determination not to allow the MPs to remain in Parliament. What are some of the effects that weighed on our minds as exceptional circumstances that were alluded to in the ruling? The 4 constituencies of Amenfi Central, Fomena, Aguna West, and Suhum in the Western region, Ashanti region, Central region, and Eastern regions of Parliament are made up of hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians who had queued to elect these members of Parliament to represent their interests in Parliament as their voices. By declaring that their duly elected representatives in Parliament had vacated their seats for acts that were interpreted within the light of Article 97(1)(g) by the Speaker, the Speaker was actually enforcing this interpretation of Article 97(1)(g) against those hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians.
And you hear the Chief Justice continuously talk about interpretation by the Speaker. The Speaker also, and in fact, those who are aligned with that argument say he was consistent that he was not interpreting the Constitution, but as it were, only communicating the essence of violating Article 97 G and H. But the court was of the considered view that the Speaker did actually interpret the Constitution.
Yes,
by that action.
And not just the Speaker, the court was of the view that considering what happened on the floor of Parliament today, and even the parties before the court itself, they had different interpretations to what Article 97(1)(g) and H actually meant. So clearly, there were different interpretations to it. And it is only the Supreme Court that has that jurisdiction to interpret and enforce the Constitution. So it's even beyond the Speaker. Even the parties before the court itself, they were divided.
On the matter of the indefinite adjournment, in fact, this particular case of the court saying that until the final determination of the original case before them, this matter should still be
So that's actually one of the grounds that on which the applicants came to say that ordinarily ex parte applications, or if you like, when an injunction is granted ex parte, it should last for 10 days, and then it is repeated on notice. However, what we saw here was the Supreme Court granting an indefinite order for an ex parte motion. That was the ground of the applicants. But the Supreme Court says that, yes, that is what ordinarily the rules would say. However, the applicant failed to appreciate that when the Supreme Court is sitting under Article 2, it looks at Articles 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. Now, 2.2 simply says that when the Supreme Court is making a declaration, it can make such orders as it may consider appropriate for giving effect to such declarations.
I see.
So, in the view of the Supreme Court, this was the point where they used to go around the 10-day limit because they were sitting under this. And in their view, because they thought there were exceptional circumstances, they had to make orders that were appropriate or that they consider appropriate so as to be able to give effect to what they were doing. And what so they also asked another question, that even if they were giving them 10 days, you know, after they made the orders, they asked that they file the processes within 7 days. They said if all parties had filed the processes within 7 days, they could have been able to deal with the matter, but by this week, they would have ended with the matter. And it wouldn't have been more than the 10 days anyway. So that was the explanation they gave for the reason they had to give an indefinite order in respect of an ex parte motion.
In fact, because that was one of the contentious matters, that an ex parte motion is abnormal to have to be given an indefinite
order. Yes, according to the rules of court.
According to the rules of court.
But they rely on the Constitution.
Well, Lawyer Martin Kpebo and Dr. Rashid Oman is going to be joining us in a bit right now. But let's hear from the Chief Justice, specifically talking about this matter of the indefinite that was applied in the case of this ex parte motion. And my two guests will be joining me right now. But take a look.
Grants of orders beyond 10 days. The Speaker's lawyer urges that because of Order 25, Rule 18 of the High Court Civil Procedure Rules 2004, CI 47, that enjoins high courts to grant injunctions and other preservation orders for 10 days in the first instance if heard ex parte and without notice to one party summoned before the court. The Supreme Court was also enjoined to grant the ex parte order for 10 days as a matter of rules and practice. This is a submission that fails to appreciate the import of Article 2.2 and 2.3 and 2.4, which guide the Supreme Court when dealing with a constitutional matter such as this.
And we have a conversation on this right now, considering a number of you have been reacting to this. Dr. Rashid Draman is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Martin Kpebo is also private legal practitioner, one of the foremost human rights lawyers we have in this country. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you so much. And I'll start off with you, Lawyer Martin Kpebo, as an officer of the court, and having followed this particular case quite closely. The outcome today of the Supreme Court, considering the Speaker's application, did that strike you differently from what the Supreme Court judges who sat on this case thought?
Yes, absolutely.
Why is that?
Absolutely. This last week, you know, I've been mentioning this last week. You know, I've been mentioning Dennis' example. Yes, the exams Dennis wrote and passed to become a lawyer. That's it. If Dennis is rising to the Supreme Court, sometimes High Court and Court of Appeal, a few exams here and there. But Supreme Court, nobody writes any exams to go to Supreme Court. So it's the same text everybody is reading. From what I read, I don't think that is what Article 2 is saying. Because we have what we call settled practice. If you want to see that the practice is settled, even you check the proceedings of 18th October, the lawyer who applied, Pakwesi Abedu, he himself told the court, is there, you can check, that he wants the order for 10 days because that is the settled practice. Settled. If the court is going to go bring a new rule, it's not done in the fashion the Supreme Court did. Then they had to give very detailed reasons to persuade lawyers and other persons interested in reading. But if you read the orders of the 18th of October, no detailed reasoning and persuasion was offered. So today's resort to Article 2 is not persuasive at all. And the more the Supreme Court digs in its heels, the more it will lose us, because you're losing lawyers. You're losing lawyers, and that shouldn't be. Because you see, for us to say openly that we disagree with the Supreme Court, it doesn't come lightly. So before you see a lawyer say, I disagree with the Supreme Court on X, Y, Z, then it tells you it's indefensible. Because when it's 50-50, people will just rather shut up because they say, well, it's a discretion. And you know, each person, the Supreme Court judge has the discretion and he exercises it that way. So, well, we may not make too much noise when it's 50-50. But this one is very settled, very, very, very settled, that if you go alone, that's one party and the lawyer, go alone to the court for an injunction, and in this case, and it applies to this stay of execution, usually that order is for 10 days. Check the proceedings of 18th October and the orders made on that day. The Supreme Court did not persuade anybody as to why the order should last to the end of the case. And I believe today's resort to Article 2 is too late. It's just too little, too late. The court is losing us. And you see the Afro barometer thing on this trust in the judiciary, you see it's coming down from 65% in 2012. The latest one says what? 35%. So from 2012 to 2024, about how many? 12 years on, the trust in the judiciary has been halved. So I thought that the court would be mindful of some of those things. And the way, you know, in recent times, many people are talking, many people are railing and railing. So I thought the court would have been mindful of that and seen how to handle this application so that at least Parliament's dignity is restored to a certain extent. But today, standing in court throughout the proceedings, I didn't get that at all. It's a disappointment. No. You see, the trust in the judiciary will go down and down because then quickly,
right?
You see, even the matter of Justice Enes was raised that he was an MPP parliamentary candidate. That's also something they should have just removed.
Well, the Chief Justice's response to that was that this matter was a constitutional matter and not a political matter. And so that the said judge being on the panel really was immaterial to the concerns that the Speaker's lawyer, Thaddeus Sori, had raised. Does that cut it for you?
I'm sure once again, you know, I'm not persuaded. This case is as political as anything else. This is a case between NDC and MPP. Straight. No curve, no bend. This is a case between MPP and NDC. So when you have a justice who is a member of the MPP, no, you don't empanel him. You don't empanel him. You see, the thing, cut to the chase is just come down to, well, I have the power and I've decided. That's what it is. But no, it should be persuasion with lots of authorities, okay, reasoning that anybody reading it to see that, yeah, this one, I give up, I surrender. But that reason that was given, no, it doesn't go far at all. This case is MPP versus NDC. I'm saying so. That's the way I see this case. You can't just say because they've raised constitutional provisions, then it's not NDC and MPP. It's NDC versus MPP. Simple. Even lay people, when the Supreme Court said it, there were lay people in court who were whispering that, but this one, and also outside. This one is MPP versus NDC. That's why I said, so you are left with a feeling that it just shows that, well, I have the power. I've decided. Yeah, at the end of the day, that's just what you were left with, but not superior legal reasoning. No. I didn't see that.
Well, Dr. Rashid Rahman, and hold on a bit for me. Dr. Rashid Rahman, I just want to bring you in. The Chief Justice, in fact, to at least come to terms with the sentiments of the people, at the ending of the proceedings today, she expressed the sentiment that you have been expressing all the while, that yes, indeed, we are in a constitutional crisis. Parliament is not sitting. But with the outcome of today, does it contribute to the correction of that crisis that we find ourselves in? If you can unmute for me.
Can you hear me, Alfred?
Clearly.
Yes. So I was saying, as the court proceedings were going on, I was thinking about our 275 members of parliament and how they would each individually feel about the outcome. Because at the end of the day, most of what they do in the House I think it's based on a lot of understanding and a lot of compromise amongst them. Sometimes even to the detriment of the law that they are fighting in court right now. Sometimes, you know, the numbers are not there in Parliament, but because they want the flow of the work of Parliament, you know, nobody raises any objection. And so far as no objection is raised, the Speaker allows the work of Parliament to go on. You know, the more we see, you know, this kind of legal arguments, I'm not a lawyer, so I won't go into even the merits or demerits of whatever happened in court today. But for me, I'm just thinking that, you know, the court getting into the space of Parliament in an era when, you know, the numbers are very tight. It creates, you know, a situation where, for instance, I mean, if someone is aggrieved by the outcome, depending on how they read it, then we might see a situation where they will say, okay, we are also going to apply the law in Parliament, and we are going to invoke every single rule in the book.
Right.
Then the crisis deepens. Then members of Parliament will go into the House, and, you know, nothing would happen. Then we are still in the situation where, you know, which group sits is still not resolved, and that is something that will be resolved politically.
Right. But also, so then essentially you come to the point where that concern about using the courts or relying on the courts overly to address political matters, in your view, could set a dangerous precedent.
Yes, indeed, because like I was saying, if you want to use the law always, I mean, the law is there. I think everybody has to obey the law in Parliament. First one to obey the law because they make the laws and so on. But I think there are times when, especially now, we are losing time every single day, right? And there's serious government business that needs to be done. Everybody can be ordered to obey the Supreme Court, the Speaker, the NDC caucus, and so on. Then they go into Parliament, and then they boycott Parliament, or they refuse to do the work of Parliament. Decisions become very difficult to arrive at, and then it goes on and on and on. Or when they sit in the House, and then they start invoking all the rules that they can invoke. And then, Alfred, one fundamental thing for me is, I mean, I heard arguments about representation and how the people of, I mean, all the people who queued and voted for the MPs are going to be denied representation in Parliament for these few weeks. But how about the people in SAL that, I mean, people have been asking, and some of us have said our Parliament is not properly constituted so long as there are some people who are not represented right from day one of the 8th Parliament. How about those people? I mean, is there anybody who is speaking for them? Is the court aware of their case? Are they less important than Agona Swedro and all the other constituencies that we have?
Yes.
Agona West, yeah. And, you know, so I think these are fundamental questions that we need to ask.
Okay. But see, and while we conclude on this, you talk about, Council, you talk about how today's outcome further deepens the mistrust for the courts, and that is disconnected from the sentiments of people. But if you listen to the Chief Justice, she expressed those same sentiments that we're in a constitutional crisis. She is well aware of what's happening. That's not soothing for you?
Yes. So, saying, what do I say? What I can say is that, I may not be in the head of the Chief Justice, so I'll hasten slowly. What I can say, and which I've said, is that, well, for me, what transpired in court today did not show that the court was ready to do something to dissolve the constitutional crisis. That's not what I saw. That's not what I saw. There is even mediation. So a lot of stuff could have been done to dissolve the crisis. As I said, when you look, you see law as a tool of social engineering. You see, we use law to bring society together. We use law to promote development, etc. So there are different ways that the court could have gone about this to be able to help dissolve the tension. As I said, it was simple for me. The court would simply have vacated the part of the order that says that the order suspending the speaker's ruling is to stay to the end. Mr. Okanse, as for that point, look, no matter what you say, that's one point that if you survey most lawyers, you get most lawyers agreeing that once the speaker was not heard, you couldn't have made that order that you are suspending his order until you finish hearing the case. I think the Supreme Court just didn't want to eat humble pie. That one, it will be difficult. We will never agree. No, I won't agree with the Supreme Court. You don't do that. So they should have eaten humble pie, rolled back that part of the order, and then, ask the parties to judge. You see, but this strict thing, I have the power. I will rule how I want. That's the way I understood it.
Well, the road or the path to November 11 is one to watch, and the conversation has already started right from now till the next couple of weeks ahead of us. Lawyer Martin Kpebu, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and also to you, Dr. Rashid Rahman, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. And Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Also, Martin Kpebu is private legal practitioner, one of the foremost human rights lawyers we have in this country. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next after this quick break, call it a campaign of questions, and you will not be far from right, because that's exactly what the two dominant presidential candidates, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and John Dramani Mahama, are doing right now. They are trading questions at each other, and the answers to those questions, obviously, will find out whether that would influence your decision to vote for either of them. Stay with us. We're back shortly.
Papa Sammy, I beg, if you find something small, give us.
Bro Sammy, you see, no be say boys no want do nothing and just they rely on handouts. Jobs to no deal.
I understand your hassle. Hope they come. John Mahama, they come do the National Apprenticeship Program where he go sort you guys.
Brother Sammy, waiting with that.
John Mahama knows say no be everybody we won't work for office. Like me.
That one day is true.
Under the National Apprenticeship Program, young men and women where they won't learn craft will be enrolled under the program and attached to a senior craftsman who will train them for free.
I beg you, mechanic day inside. Me like this. I don't want to learn mechanical, but the course no.
Mechanics day inside. Organizing, dressmaking, fabric making, catering, hairdressing, tiling, painting. What they even sweet about this whole thing, they say, when you plead, the NDC government go make sure say they go give you certificate where you go fit take go look for job anywhere.
That's sweet. Oh, that's be one waffle.
Another one waffle thing be say, when you plead, the NDC government go set you up with startup capital and equipment to make sure you can start your own business.
Wow! I dey go shop in my town wait 7 December.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
You know, one bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior. You know, one bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
If whiskey could talk, Johnny Walker Black Label would sing. With notes that only come with 12 years in a barrel. Sweet, smooth toffee, rich fruit, and a touch of smoke. Tastes as good as it sounds.
Drink responsibly, not for sale to persons under 18 years of age. Not recommended for pregnant women. This advert is FDA approved.
The 5 kg of rice has moved from 25 cedis to 165.
Hey! Boss, cement moved from 24 cedis to 105 cedis now. Hey!
The kenke is 5 cedis. The fish, I have 10, 15, and 20 cedis. Which one do you want?
Hey!
Stop the A.
Hey!
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
The luckiest.
Star 712#.
Luck is everywhere.
8K. Hey, you get an 8K. Get a package on your book. Hey, wait.
You go put it on his tab. This is my man.
Good luck. Hey, we'll wait here. We have star 712. It's much more phone. I'm on dialing the magic numbers. Star 712. Now welcome to the luckiest. And I'm with me at home ticket. You can buy for yourself or your loved one.
Mommy, tell mommy who's here.
You're buying for me, right?
Or who else?
Let's
choose buy tickets for others.
Love you, boo boo.
So, maybe straight to option 4.
Now we try. You need to buy tickets worth 50 Ghana to qualify. Yes, you can buy random or preferred tickets.
I'm choosing random ticket. That's it.
Listen, if you buy the random ticket, the system chooses a random number for you. But if you buy the preferred, you get to input your own preferred 5 digits. 5.
Baby, give me your 5 numbers.
And how much are we buying?
Babe, look at the body and buy you.
With your body,
Hey,
there we are. Tread cautiously. Now follow the prompts and confirm. Now the luckiest.
The luckiest is regulated by the NLA on the Caritas platform, not for persons below 18 years. TNCs apply.
My life wasn't always like this. I worked in a bank and had money in bonds to cushion me for the future. Then, with a stroke of a pen, my life was destroyed. My bank was part of the 420 financial institutions which the MPP government recklessly collapsed. What was to become the life of the workers? No one in this insensitive government cared. And suddenly, I was jobless. Their incessant borrowing also led to a debt restructuring program that affected me, and just like that, a significant portion of my lifetime investment vanished. Even worse, my lifetime savings from 30 years of hard work has been rendered useless due to the continuous depreciation of the cedi and extremely high cost of living in the country. Now, look at me. The fruits of my toil and sweat have all gone down the drain because of bad leadership. What to eat with my children is even a struggle. God, help me and the many who share in my pain. Let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end. Change must come.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
While the boys get front row seats to an exciting Premier League game, the girls are next door, catching up on a scenic getaway to the Australian outback. Watching together is always better. That's why DSTV Stream has content for the whole family to enjoy. Families that watch together, bond together.
Discover the Arabian charm and the Emirates aboard the Celestial Journey cruise ship on an extraordinary voyage to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sebaniyas Island, Qatar, Oman, and Bahrain from the 20th to the 29th of December 2024. This package includes an 8-day cruise with drinks, meals, visas, return flights, onboard internet, hotel accommodation, excursions, transfers, and travel insurance. Call us now on 0308-251-055 to secure your cabin with $1,000 deposit and pay the rest in installments. Life is better at sea. Experience it.
Nana, who are you voting for this year?
How about area? As for this question, you need not ask. John Mama and the NDC, of course. Who else? You know there should be a change. Maybe I should have brought my to our papa.
Nana, born before computer.
Yeah,
do you still remember how to vote?
I am so sharp. On December 7th, when I get to my police station, I'll take my voter's ID card to the EC officer. He will check, find my name, and give me a ballot paper. I'll inspect the ballot paper and make sure the EC stamp is at the back with no other markings around it. When I get to the box, I will just inspect the paper again, search for the umbrella. I will just put my thumb in the ink pad and stamp the empty box just by the umbrella, not on the line or Mohammed's face, but in the empty box just by the umbrella. Then I clean my hand, fold my ballot paper vertically and horizontally, and drop it straight into the presidential box.
Nana, well done.
On the parliamentary candidate, I'll just stamp my hand in the empty box just by the umbrella. Now I'm done. Give it back.
Hey, na.
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
Everybody knows Acrobato. And if you know Acrobato, it means you know M-Punch Homeopathic Clinic. M-Punch Homeopathic Clinic is my pillar. Let's hear what others are saying about M-Punch Homeopathic Clinic. Who will be careful M-Punch one?
Chesena me ankasa me period na say problems wom ntina ma wo ho idea ma me papa chesena nya asem ketewa na me coin point no mo hwe me mogam no mo hwe bibia na so mo meduro a me fire no ene ma won kra me enu kofro kwa na me coin mu a eba
head everything yourself
me ma me no adwodwo eda ho a wontumi nante ene ne ko end point o mama no nura ene ne ho idea watimi asori anante.
That's end point for you. Hello. Hey, ohwehwe what che. Okay. A free bra wo di end point what dance. Am me call you no. Me Jones sema na enkoyie and person na my nyina na magina sabema na me be fear for there the one nyina jaresa. You heard everything. I have secret. M-Punch is my secret. M-Punch Homeopathic Clinic. I'm free.
Wanna style they speak wanna truth unapologetically ask.
Crafted with flavorful African herbs and fruits. To honor people, we just celebrate your originality. Cheers to 8 years of authentic taste.
The 5 kg of rice has moved from 25 cedis to 165. Oh.
Hey! Boss, cement moved from 24 cedis to 105 cedis now.
Hey!
The kenke is 5 cedis. The fish I have 10, 15, and 20 cedis. Which one do you want?
Hey!
Stop the A.
Hey!
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
This is Hot Issues, your passport to the most compelling conversations of our time. We go one-on-one with the movers and shakers, the thought leaders, and the game changers. We ask the questions that matter, and we don't back down.
Tonight on Hot Issues, I sit with the man at the Center of Corruption Investigations.
Join me on Hot Issues here on TV3.
Hot Issues shows Sundays at 2 p.m. on TV3.
TV3, first in news. Welcome back to Ghana Tonight. Now, there's been trading of questions between John Mahama and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And let's just do a quick recall. John Mahama, the flag bearer of the NDC, was the first to shoot the questions, 5 questions at Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Take a look.
170 questions himself. Indeed, he shouldn't answer 170 questions. He should answer only 3 questions. 3. Why is the exchange rate 17 cedis to the dollar? Question 1. Exam, he should come and write. Why has Ghana's debt risen from 120 billion to 767 billion in 8 years? Question 2, he should come and answer. Question 3. Why is inflation where it is? Why did it rise to 54%? Question 4. Why did you borrow 42 billion cedis from the Bank of Ghana?
Well, so those were the questions that John Mahama posed to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and in a sequel to the 170 questions that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia posed to the late, that's Pakwesi Misatha. These 5 questions, as you see there: exchange rate, Ghana's debt risen to over 767 billion, inflation, and then borrowing over 42 billion. Why has that's Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia running away from the economy or talking about the economy and to digitalization? Well, guess what? Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia today also sent some questions over to John Dramani Mahama, and these were, in fact, over 50 questions that he put out. First off, we'll take the first 5. Can you name any broad-based social intervention policy that you implemented in Ghana as president? Why did you run advertisements against free SHS? If you think your economy, the economic management was so good, how come we experienced more than 4 years of doomsday under your government? Why did the banking system almost collapse under your government? Why did you cancel teacher training allowances? And a number of them. Right? About 50 questions Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia posed to John Dramani Mahama in response to the 5 questions that John Mahama posed to him. Well, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the president, has also been talking because John Mahama himself had some questions for Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo as well. But this is what the president has been saying.
I'm also a class here. There's a class of 1. Class of 1. I don't know what's our classroom. And your class, I'm a person about a classroom.
Mahama's class is only his 1-term tenure, and that is something I don't like Dr. Bawumia to associate with. Dr. Bawumia will continue another term after winning this post to be a part of Rollins, Kufuor, and myself, who were handed 2 terms in office.
Mahama, there are no 1-term presidents, you know, there. Yeah, no any about Bawumia.
So you might be wondering why Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the president, joining the question and the back and forth between John Mahama and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And I'll tell you why. In fact, don't say that you're sticking to just one poll. If you look at a number of surveys and polls that have been done by both NCC, Global Info Analytics, Afrobarometer survey, they all outline a number of issues that would influence the voter choices. Right? And the economy is number 1. So if you look at the 2 sets of questions that both are posing at each other, which one of them is centered on the economy? That's also finding its reference point in here. Take a look at this. According to the Global Info Analytics, which of the following will have greater influence on the people who were surveyed, their decision on who to vote for? The current economic condition, 55% of the respondents said it was going to influence their decision on who to vote for. Past performance of the parties came next, 40%. Credibility of the candidate, 34%. 28% party's manifesto, 9% galamsey, and then also other factors. If you look at the NCCA survey, according to the respondents, the highest number of respondents who said that in terms of what will influence their decision on who to vote for, they're looking at the candidates and their promises plus the candidates' track record and their experiences as well. All of those are going to influence their decision on who to vote for. But John Mahama had some questions for Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the president, as well. Take a look.
Na Nana Akufo-Addo mibusa no one question. Sika yete so no ewe he. Sika oka se yete so a ekom de ye no. Sa sika no ewe he.
Well, the verdict, as Dennis will always say, is with you, the people. And the answers to these questions, some of them will find expressions in your daily lives. On behalf of the rest of the team, I want to say thank you so much for staying with us here on your Election Command Center. The conversation with this and many more continues. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. Join the New Day team, Sunrise team on TV3 and on 3FM 92.7. My name is Alfred Okanse. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.